Hey, this is Kevin coming at you live from the sports lab. It's almost 6 o'clock, and yeah, I'm nearly drunk already. Happy Wednesday. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Today we're talking about St. Louis Blues hockey. Today we're talking about St. Louis Blues hockey. A deep cut defenseman who had a no explanation needed career highlight in the 2019 Stanley Cup Final, and it was called into existence beside a bathroom urinal. It's not mythological. That's hockey. Blue 11 is Carl Gunnarsson, May 29th, 2019. Blues at Bruins, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. TD Garden, Boston. The Blues are already down one game in the series, and St. Louis isn't chasing. It's just Boston. It's chasing 50 years of postseason humiliation, because before this night, the Blues were 0-13 in the Stanley Cup Final. They never won a Stanley Cup Final game. Not a series, one game. They were swept in 68, 69, and 70. Then they spent nearly half a century trying to get back to this stage, where the organization's first 3 trips had turned into public executions. Then Game 1 happened. St. Louis jumped out 2-0. Looked like it had brought the right amount of violence to the game. Then they watched Boston come back for a 4-2 win. That can be either annoying or revealing. And for a normal team, that's annoying. But for a franchise that's never won a final game, you have to imagine it got pretty heavy pretty fast. Let me fix this real quick. The Bruins weren't some tourist. They had Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, Tuukka Rask, Zdeno Chara, a defense that could still make the ice feel smaller than regulation. They won 8 straight playoff games. They were rested. They were confident. Boston in the Cup Final is not a neutral environment. The Blues, though, they had already survived their own funeral. They were last in the NHL on January 3rd. Then Jordan Binnington turned into a locked door. Craig Berube hardened the whole room, and Ryan O'Reilly gave the team a center of gravity. By late May, they were heavy. They were stubborn and hard to finish. Carl Gunnarsson fits that perfectly because he's not famous. He wasn't the guy in the poster. Gunnarsson wasn't selling the tickets. He's a left-shot Swedish defenseman from Örebro, born in 1986, drafted by Toronto in the 7th round of 2007, 194th overall. That's deep enough in the draft where a team isn't dreaming. They got a hero. They're hoping for an NHL player, and Gunnarsson became one. He came through Linköping in Sweden, crossed over to North America, and made himself useful with the Maple Leafs. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the bruiser in the movie sense. He was positional, reliable, and quietly effective. Coaches like guys like that because they reduce panic. Fans sometimes miss guys like that because the good stuff looks like nothing happened. That was his game. Read the play, take away the lane, make the first pass. Eat the shift, do it again. Toronto used him for 5 seasons before trading him to St. Louis in 2014. With the Blues, he slid into the kind of role that doesn't make you rich in attention, but it does make you valuable in May. He played behind bigger names and next to louder reputations. Around a blue line that had Alex Pietrangelo, Colton Parayko, Jay Bouwmeester, and other big guys with sharp elbows. The lesson is that championship teams need stars, but they also need the 7th round player who spends most of his career doing the quiet work, then happens to be standing over the puck when history asks for a volunteer. Game 2 starts bad for St. Louis. Samuel Blais takes a goaltender interference penalty, and Boston cashes it. Charlie Coyle scores on the power play, 4:44 of the first. TD Garden gets loud in that specific Boston way. You know the one. Blues answer at 9:37. Robert Bortuzzo fires one, gets through, and St. Louis tied it. Gunnarsson gets an assist on the play, showing this was already one of his most productive nights of the postseason before the big thing even happened. Boston takes the lead back just 40 seconds later. Joakim Nordstrom makes it 2-1. For a second, feels like the Bruins are doing what they always do. They absorb your push, punch back, and they make you explain yourself. Then Vladimir Tarasenko ties it at 14:55, and that one feels huge, not just because it's 2-2, but because the Blues, they don't go away. They don't retreat into the old St. Louis story. They just keep coming. The second period turns into a pressure test. The Blues outshoot Boston 14-6, and Boston loses Matt Grilchik after a hit from Oscar Sundqvist. That leaves Boston working with 5 defensemen, and hockey can get mean about that. You can hide it for a little while and manage it, but every extra shift costs something. By the third period, the Bills start showing up, and nobody scores. Then Gunnarsson nearly ended it before overtime. Excuse me. With under 2 minutes left, he walks into a slap shot and it rings off the post. It's not a little miss. It's the kind of post that stays in your teeth. The puck has the whole franchise attached to it, and it hits iron and says, "Not yet." So the game gets to overtime, and somewhere between the third period and sudden death, Gunnarsson runs into Craig Berube in the bathroom. There are plenty of sacred places in hockey: the locker room, the bench, the blue line. Apparently, the men's room at TD Garden belongs on that list. Gunnarsson tells Berube he needs one more chance. That's it. That's the spell. Overtime starts. St. Louis looks fresher. The Bruins are down a defenseman. The Blues are grinding them into smaller and smaller pieces. Then Brandon Carlo is about to be called for a penalty after taking down Alexander Steen. St. Louis keeps the puck on the delayed call, and that's always fun to watch because the goalie's coming off, the defense is scrambling, and everybody knows one clean look can end the night. Ryan O'Reilly moves it. Oscar Sundqvist touches it. Gunnarsson gets it inside the blue line, and he unloads. It's not a deke. It's not a masterpiece of hands. He can't stick handle like, I don't know, Thomas Fleischmann, but it's a defenseman's answer. Step in, hammer it, live with the result. The shot beats Tucker Rask at 3:51 of overtime. Blues win 3-2. Series tied 1-1. First Stanley Cup final win in St. Louis Blues history. Carl Gunnarsson, who'd never scored a playoff goal before, just delivered the biggest one of the franchise that the franchise had ever seen to that point. That's the beauty of it. Tarasenko, O'Reilly, Pietrangelo, one of them would have made sense. But Gunnarsson? That's hockey pulling a name from the back of the hat and saying, no, tonight it's this guy. After the game, everybody wanted the bathroom story. Oscar Sundqvist told reporters Gunnarsson had told Berube he just needed one more chance. Gunnarsson confirmed it, basically laughing at how ridiculous and perfect it was. He also admitted he didn't score many goals, but nothing came close to this one. Rask didn't dress it up. He said the better team usually wins in the playoffs, and St. Louis had the better team. Bruce Cassidy pointed towards execution. Boston's power play got one early. What's a power play? Boston's power play got one early, then they stalled. The Blues had taken away their space, worn down their defense, and dragged the game into their own kind of mud. That's the real turning point. Not because St. Louis took control of this series forever. They didn't. Boston came back and blasted them 7-2 in Game 3. The Blues answered in Game 4. They won Game 5 in Boston. Then the Bruins forced Game 7 with a 5-1 win in St. Louis because nothing about this cup was allowed to be easy. But Game 2 mattered because it broke the glass. The Blues are no longer the franchise that had never won a final game. They had one. They'd stolen it from Boston, and they'd proven the stage wasn't too big. Just 2 weeks later, they went back to TD Garden for Game 7 and won the Stanley Cup 4-1. O'Reilly won the Conn Smythe. Binnington became a rookie legend. Pietrangelo lifted the cup. St. Louis finally exhaled after 5 decades of almost, not yet, and maybe next year. Gunnarsson stayed with the Blues after the parade, signing a 2-year deal that summer. He played I can't talk. He played parts of 2 more seasons, but his body was getting loud. In February 2021, a knee injury cut his season short. And that June, Age of 34, he retired. His final NHL line doesn't scream superstar either. 629 career regular season games, 30 goals, 108 assists, 138 points. It's a real career, a long one, useful one. It's a Stanley Cup career. But the line that matters in St. Louis is simpler. Carl Gunnarsson asked for one more chance. Then he got it. Then he buried it. Next up on Warrior 36. Uh-oh. Warrior 36, we go to February 27th, 2016, and we leave the ice for one of the loudest regular season basketball moments ever. Steph Curry, Oklahoma City, pulling up from somewhere near Tulsa, forcing Mike Breen into the double bang and making an entire league question what's physically reasonable. But that's next time. For now, Blue 11 belongs to Carl Gunnarsson, the defenseman who hit the post, found the coach, called his shot in the bathroom, and gave the St. Louis Blues their first Stanley Cup final win. Sometimes history arrives with trumpets. Sometimes it arrives from the point, through traffic, after a quick word at the urinal. I want to thank you for sticking around and hope to see you next time.